How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to the Tier Maker. Today I'm joined by my good friend GGYGO. How's it going, Gary?
How's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's having a great day.
All right, first time I'm having you after all the times you've been, hosting me on your channel. So that's gonna be really cool. We're streaming this live as well on my channel over on YouTube, of course. And we are gonna look at the post-Dune meta. It's a bit weird because there's no big events coming up except the World Championship, which doesn't really involve any of this. But I think it's still going to be interesting to see even the slight power shift of like a set like Duelist Nexus, which on one hand doesn't look extremely like game breaking, like we saw with Photon, of course, Power of the Elements, Dark Green Blast. Those were like really game breaking. Now we're getting a set that's like a little bit more mellow. What do you think?
First things first, I just want to say, congratulations on your success so far. I really do love watching people grow, and I've been watching you grow on YouTube, and big success to you, and I'm definitely happy to see it.
Appreciate it.
Looking at the new format and what we have to deal with, I was kind of giving out a sentiment of this a little earlier, and that's a lot of this set doesn't really matter as far as looking ahead to AGOV. AGOV is going to change the game pretty immensely. I think that's the next set that's going to be very good, right? I don't think that it's POE level, but it's definitely somewhere around like DUEA, I think. But we'll have to see. I think there's enough cards coming out in it that really do warrant calling it a really good set.
We're also probably going to do like a AGOV breakdown in the future. You're probably going to have a lot of that on your channel as well. And again, of course, if you haven't checked out Gary's channel, please do in the description below. We're just going to start off. We have S, A, B, C, D. I actually had names for them, but they got reset, so we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. I think S tier, for me, will be the best decks. A will be the top contenders. B is going to be like solid or okay choices. And C and D, I mean, D is obviously going to be like the worst of the worst, but C is going to be, I suppose, just not good enough. I mean, D is going to be unplayable, but C is going to be, I'm trying to find an example here, but we're going to get to it in the tier list probably. So we'll not spoil it, but we'll start off with Angelica, I think, of the Infernoble Knights. What do you think about that?
I really have never liked Infernoble as an archetype. Before, when it was a huge combo deck and there was like a Rordon, if you held Imperm for a Rordon, the deck just passed. I think that it's one of those things where the deck can combo really well, but I don't really think that the deck itself can do enough. Like, you still have to play a lot of bricks, and there's still like a lot of combos that you can do, but I just feel like a lot of the other decks that we have right now just kind of do a little bit better. And if you're playing into a format where D-Shifter and Arise Heart and all these cards are just ruling the format, now there might be a ban list that changes a lot of this. I think that you're playing a deck that loses harder into those cards, and I don't think that it could ever be like considered like that great while that's the situation, especially when you're already playing so many bricks in your deck and you have to like rely on having so much in your graveyard. Yeah. So for me, it would still just be in that B tier, actually. But I don't really think the deck is going to be overall that great.
Yeah, I agree. I think the points about, and we're going to probably talk about this in regards to a lot of the decks here. We have some, I think Dune brings with it a lot of combo decks into the format. But again, as you said, those things, like we saw what happened with Super Heavy. A pretty classic combo deck, but it still didn't manage to break through things like Kashtira, Shifter, even Droll. Like once it gets back into decks, one Droll can just shut off your entire turn. We're going to see if that maybe changes a little bit. I think the cards are extremely cool, but I don't think it can carry that much. The next one, Branded Fusion, I think, or like Branded in general, of course. I'm going to start off by saying that I think that from my testing and my experience, and probably like this is the deck that I know best, its matchups against those other decks in the list, feels like nothing that is new on this list is better than this deck currently, which still I think puts it as a top contender, maybe somewhere somewhere in the top contender slot. It feels to me like Branded didn't really lose any power, and those other new decks, while they are like, if they can resolve their board, like if Synchron that we're gonna talk about, even Infernoble Knights, if they can resolve their board, it's gonna be hard for Branded to break, but still, Branded could do like crazy stuff still.
I think Branded, it's still, it's just Branded. Like, there's not really much that has altered from the deck. And I think that it's still pretty mid. Like, you can play it and you can do well, and there's a lot of like complex plays that you can do. But at the end of the day, it's not really bringing anything new to the table. You're still just able to puppet lock people. You're able to do different things with the deck. But ultimately, I think that there's not much that it brings to the format. I think if you want to find a deck that is really solid and can get you there, then Branded's usually the pick. But as far as where I would put it, it'd probably be in the same place. To be completely fair, I feel like most decks this format are going to be around the area. There's a couple that'll be varied. But we're in a very much so tier 2 format, which, again, I think that's my problem with leaving tier format, was we finally got a taste of like a higher tier format, like overall, like one of the craziest decks we've ever seen. So bumping back down to a format like this, everything just feels like really weak. I would still keep it in B, to be honest. Like, if we're just talking about tier 2 decks, like everything just feels like a tier 2 deck.
I think Chimera stuff, I've been testing it a lot with Branded. I think the main application for it up until now is somewhere with Branded. But I think even though it's like really cool and fun in my opinion, I think that it brings in another aspect of like losing to things like Droll in Branded, which doesn't happen in regular Branded.
So with the Chimera cards, I think that it's very similar to what Geist is going through right now, right? So like Altergeist just got a lot of brand new cards, but now you're losing to things like Nibiru in a control deck, which is weird. Like, it just shouldn't happen. It's one of those things with Chimera where I do agree that you are adding in new variances and new things that just shouldn't happen.
I think dragons are like pretty much an easy A, right? This deck is kind of nuts. It's been doing really well, I think, recently in events. What do you think?
So Dragon is actually like my pick for the format at the moment. Like, I think Dragon's so good. I think that if you're looking at a basis of what beats Kashtira, there's very few things that you're going to come up with that say, okay, this deck doesn't lose to D-Shifter. This deck doesn't lose to not drawing it out to a Rise Heart. Like, there are certain situations that, like, if they get the 33% chance to draw a D-Shifter, like, you're just going to lose no matter what you play, right? If we're talking about a deck that just inherently has such a strong ability to be resilient, play a lot of hand traps, play different variants of the same deck, have access to such good toolbox, I would say Dragon just accomplishes all of those.
With Pearly coming in, probably is one of the best decks now after the support. I'm wondering if it is still going to be that resilient, or even if people will pick it up for for events and stuff like that.
So we might differ on Pearly. I'm actually interested to get to that category.
Okay. Well, we'll get there. We'll move on to Rika. I'm just putting everything in B while we're talking about it. Then we're gonna place it. Rika is a deck that I personally, I feel kind of weird about Rika. I understand what the deck can do, and I think people already know that this deck, if it goes like untouched, a lot of the times, it can be very, very explosive, and it can be relatively hard to break their board. It's also kind of weird that, like a flower deck pops up every summer for like, the championship, takes it all home, then goes back into hibernation for the rest of the year. We don't even get to see it. I don't believe this is an A tier deck. I think this is a solid B tier deck, in my opinion. It has some really good pilots that can take it all the way, but I don't think it can really contend with what I consider to be the best decks.
When you look at a deck and where you want to place it, I think that you have to look at its conversion rate. And if 4 enter a tournament and 2 top, like, that's kind of insane, right?
But it's not really 4.
And
it's like 4 Disciples players, but it's not 4 out of everybody. It is
Well,
converting pretty well though.
the amount of players, if you look at the breakdowns, that are actually piloting Rika are super low.
Yeah.
Like, there's not many people that actually bring it into an event, but yet it's like we still see it, right? And I think that's really saying something to just what the deck can do. Like, I know people even like locally that haven't been playing for super long, but they pick up Rika and all of a sudden they start 5-0ing locals. And it's like where they go to regionals and they start doing extremely well. I think that for me, I would put Rika in A tier just because it's one of those decks where if you take the time and you really learn every single combo for the deck, because there are a lot of complicated lines that you can do and a lot of different builds that you can play for it. I think that historically Plant's always been like one of the craziest decks that you could play, just as like a side deck that not a lot of people really go after. But at the same time, like if you really take the time and learn Rika, it's really rewarding.
Realistically, again, I don't think this deck is better than Kostra. I don't think it's necessarily better a lot of the times, more than Labyrinth. It does manage to take those big events with like really, really good players like Jessica Robinson. But I still feel that, I don't know, I still feel weird about the deck. And I feel like it has a lot of weaknesses that cannot make it, in my opinion, 1.5. I would say maybe like high B tier. I can't believe Branded is here in B tier, but you know, I'm going with the flow. But I think that Rika, let's put it below Dragons right now and see if we adjust it later. I don't think it's above Dragons. We agree on that, right?
Yeah, we agree on that for sure. And I mean, like, Branded's one of those decks that I've never really respected anyway, as far as being like really solid. Because anytime it's the best deck in the room, everyone prepares for it, and then you just auto lose to things like D-Barrier, everyone's main decking Ash. Like,
Yeah.
it just becomes a lot harder to play the deck.
Synchron. So now with Crimson Dragon, it becomes a little bit more tempting to play this deck. I've been testing with it a little bit. I have some friends who've been testing with it. I think that right now the builds that I'm seeing are more like Adventure, Synchron, try to resolve Speeder, and if you do, you probably win the game because you lock your opponent out of playing entirely. However, this deck of course has extreme weaknesses. Like if we're talking about Ash on Branded Fusion, Ash on Speeder hurts 10 times more probably, but you still cannot deny that if it does resolve, it is extremely explosive.
I feel like the amount of blowouts that we have available to us, including cards like Dark Earlier, is way too good when you're into a format like this and you know that like the board's gonna be huge. I think that I've tried out the Adventure Synchron deck a few times, and just from what I've tried, I'm not super impressed with what I've seen.
Yeah.
I think that it's not very good in my opinion. I would personally put it in C. I know that a lot of people might be not on the same page with that because I know a lot of people want to see it do well. And trust me, I love Synchron. I actually just got done rewatching 5Ds completely. But at the same time, it's just not good enough, I don't think. I think there's way too many other things to play.
But let's talk about one of the elephants in the room. I think it's kind of safe to say you could put Labyrinth on, like, right on top. With the small caveat of Labyrinth being super scary, not doing extremely well in the last big events that we saw, mainly, North American World Championship qualifier. What do you think about that?
I think Lab is just Lab. Lab's insane. It's so good. I would go as far as to say I'd throw Unchained up there with it. I think that Unchained Labyrinth, the variant of that build, is so crazy. I think that Lab alone is really cool. It's really solid. And if you want to do like Trap Labyrinth, if you want to do like Furniture Labyrinth, or if you want to try out like the new Unchained Labyrinth, there's so many different ways you can play the deck, and I've seen so many people try to like splash different engines with it as well. I think having the ability to just tutor out any normal trap card, especially with rollback coming out soon, hopefully. I know that's a thing. I know that we're getting a couple other ones that are really strong too. Even like Butler that we're getting.
No, Butler is
the deck
absolutely
just has
crazy.
Yeah, the deck just has so much So I know whenever I play against it, I'm like, better open Asher Bell.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
No, it's super
But
scary. And
I definitely think
sorry, the future support is really scary as well. I mean, it looks like Konami is hinting at us that okay, we like this deck. We want to keep like pumping out stuff for it, even if they will hit stuff around it. The main engine of the deck is still very good, very strong. Circular, representing Cyber's gang here, died for the sins of the deck. Still made it out with 1 soul remaining. I personally think that people might underestimate this deck a little bit. I think Cybers in general right now, it is a one-trick pony, but I still think, even though like Circular is at 1, I think I will put it as an okay option still. I don't think it's not good. I think it's okay.
Mathmech is tier 2, but like a higher cyber stack would be Marincess. I think Marincess is just like the best cyber stack right now. When it comes to playing Mathmech, it's fine. I don't think that's super bad just because you can play a ton of hand traps and like
Yeah.
Eatle and whatnot. But overall, I don't think that it's like the strongest deck in the room.
Yeah.
You can still play it and do well. We've already seen it do very well in different events.
Another new deck is Rescue Ace, getting some new support and as commons as well, so more people are going to be able to pick it up, even though Hydrant costs like an ultimate rare Fenrir right now, which is crazy.
Yep.
I'm going to give my 2 cents about the deck. I played this a little bit, I tested with it, I played against it a little bit more. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that one of the reasons it's doing so well in the OCG, because we're looking at the OCG and we're seeing, you know, pie charts and why not. This deck is taking up like a lot of the top spots. Definitely not the only best deck. Tier is still alive there, but Rescue Ace is like, okay, we're seeing like if we're looking from the TCG to the OCG, I mean, yeah, this looks like a solid deck. I have a feeling that the reason that it's doing so well is because it's probably one of the best decks out there, except for Tier. Tier does it really well too. But Rescue Ace plays around Maxi extremely well. And when you're looking at 2 formats that are completely different because of one singular card, it makes sense that a deck that with 1 or 2 summons can set 4 interruptions and play a bunch of hand traps in addition to that will do well. What do you think?
I've seen the deck played a lot already. I think that it has a lot of ways to go ahead and play through a lot of interruption. As far as I've seen like the proxy F combos to summon Mud Dragon and then summon Turbulence to protect the Turbulence so they can set 4, which is kind of cool. There's the builds that are still playing like the Lances so you can protect your Turbulence as well. It's really just Turbulence Turbo, which is interesting. We've seen a few decks like that. It's very reminiscent even of like the Synchron deck. It's like, yeah, if this one card resolves, then it's like insane. But if it doesn't resolve, then, you know, it is what it is. I think the Impulse is a very cool card, being able to just summon it from, or pitch it from hand and summon the draw 2 pitch one. I've seen that used as like a tier engine, which is definitely very cool. But as far as a deck, I would have to still put it at tier 2. I don't think that it's as good as people like it right now. I've been seeing a ton of it, but I've literally never been impressed by a single duel that I've seen.
The next deck we're going to talk about, Gary. I know you love this. I love this too because of you. I started playing this deck. I picked up, this was my 2nd deck ever because of your channel. We love it to death, but what can we do? It's not it right now.
Engage is a very cool card.
It's very good. Very good.
It's very good. So I can't lie. I can't get on here and say Brandon's not that great right now and then be like, oh, Striker tier 0, you know?
Striker is definitely S tier. This is what you want to say.
Yeah, it's definitely S tier.
Yeah.
So I would say it's still a tier 2 deck. I wouldn't put it anywhere less than that. 3 thrust, 2 engage. I don't think that it's like that bad. I think the deck still has a lot of potential in the format. I think that so something was told to me a long time ago about playing Striker, and you know, I haven't really played the deck too much since pre-po. I actually have it built right now, so I'm playing for like locals and whatnot. When you play Striker in an event, you're already putting yourself in an uphill battle. And I think that's crazy to hear, just because like it's a deck that you really need to work for your win when all these other decks just put up win like immediately, you know?
That's very true.
And
100% agree with that.
it's you are working so hard because you're like, gotta see Ray. And then you're like, all right, cool, I saw Ray, but now do I have enough non-engine to break the board?
You think it's better than Synchron right now?
I do. I would not play that deck before I played Striker.
Do you think it's better? Not you specifically, though. You think it's better than Rescue Ace right now?
Right now, I think I would probably think about them in the same light.
All right, that's fair. I think people
They
who
both
haven't
have glaring
played
issues.
Striker extensively don't understand that like playing it's exactly like what you said summarizes what it's like to be a Striker player especially in big events. It's just a major headache. Like playing this deck for 8 hours is a strain that not a lot of people could understand. 100% agree. I think we can all also agree that Super Heavy Samurai is just I've seen it pop up with like in relation to synchro and stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's super heavy. You know, maybe if we get back one Scarecrow, but it's to the point right now where like all the one card combos are all turned off for the most part.
One of my biggest disappointments, I remember doing a tier list the day after the recent ban list with Denglong. I was doing a tier list of decks post ban list, and I was recording it. I was done. I was starting to like edit, and then I look at Sword Soul. I'm like, wait, I didn't really address the fact that Denglong I didn't really understand it. Then the day after, I go on DB. I play against some Sword Soul player. They absolutely destroy me with the Denglong stuff, and I'm like, whoa, because I never played against this card since I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Unfortunately, this deck is just not good enough, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it really is. I don't think it has been for a while. It's very fragile into a lot of hand traps, and especially going back into like all the hand traps we will be playing. I just don't think it bodes well for that deck.
Now this is one. I think this is going to be a debate point because it seems like you don't think the same things that I do about Pearly. So you know, as a Striker player myself, I will let you go first.
Just based on popularity, okay? Just based on popularity, because that's how metas are formed. Like if a deck is super backed, it's going to inherently just start winning events because just the sheer number of people playing the deck. I think that Pearly won't end up winning any events. I think that it'll top some events. I don't think it'll win though. I think the deck is very bad personally. Even with the new card, because like if you look at like how things are like hand trapped in the deck or like how you play around certain things in the deck, like nothing really changed now that we have like the new Noir. I think that it's cool that we have the ability to get a lot of draw power, but you still fall in the same category of if your board gets broken and you can't stop lethal, you just get lethal.
I think for me, it needs to be at the top of A tier, and I think for two main reasons. I think that the new support doesn't really do anything. Like it doesn't really do anything that the deck wasn't able to do before. But I think two things. One, I think this deck has a pretty good Castior matchup, and I think we're going to be putting that deck as the best deck on this list.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much debate on that. I think it has a solid Castior matchup. This is why it's been able to do well. Not only popularity, I understand that, like, okay, we got some big names in the room playing Pearly, hyping up the deck. It looks really cool. It seems like it takes a really solid player to run this deck successfully, especially in the level that we saw, you know, Pac piloting the deck. I think this was like noteworthy. But I think, again, the new support doesn't bring anything new to the deck, but I think it has a really, really good ability to go second without a lot of non-engine. It does really well going second. And I think at the end of the day, it puts up a monster in Noir, the big Noir, that is kind of unparalleled right now. If you look at there's no monster that is that, it's not that it does a lot, it's just that you can't really do anything to interact with it. For Worlds, this deck has 2 hits, which is going to be interesting to see if people will actually pick it up. But we're going to move on to some sprite variants. I'll put them all together in the, for time's sake. We have Pure Sprite, which I think a lot of people called Melfeast right now. I think it's pretty much the baseline version of some people play frogs, but it doesn't really do much. But like pure sprite is like not runic sprite, basically. We have runic for hire, which obviously has a striker sprite engine. Then we have live twin. What do you think in terms of like, so which one is the best out of all of these? All of the three of these?
Runic for hire.
Runic for hire, I think we can both agree that it's like probably the strongest. Live twin probably second, and then like pure will be the last one, right? Which one of them can contend with tier 1 though?
I would say for hire, absolutely, 100%.
I think it should be between Dragon and Pearly.
Yeah, it's the deck's just crazy. The deck's just very, very good.
Yeah.
I think the twins fall short. I think that they just aren't as good as we had hoped, and I think that even the Melfi engine is really solid, but it has a lot of consistency issues that I think that the other two don't falter under. I do think that the runic cards being in the deck do allow you to do so much more. And deleting those from the deck is definitely unfortunate in the Melfi variant, but you do replace that with other things that are also very cool for it. But I don't think that those also are able to keep up with the meta. When you have a deck that's so versatile, like Runic for hire, for example, you have pops, you have back row blowups, you have negation, you can spit out Underworld Goddess. Like you have so many different things that you can utilize. And toolbox decks like that, I think, are always going to be inherently better than others.
I think Kashira is top S tier. No need to debate on that too much. The only thing that I will say is that this is a dead man walking situation, and I'm really scared for Fenrir. I don't want Fenrir to pay for the sins of the deck because I think, some people will just say, okay, just kill Fenrir. We don't need it. The deck dies. Everybody's happy. I'm sad for OCG players that cannot splash Fenrir into their decks. What do you think?
Fenrir to 1.
Fenrir
Let's
to 1.
see it.
All right. Kid to 1 right after that.
And you can't even count the games that I've seen where people just go summon Fenrir and they have like a hand trap and they pass and it's enough.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
This card's good.
Because they go like normal summon Blue Tang, no effect. Then they go like summon Sea Angel effect. And then you just go, all right, cool. Like banish the Sea Angel or what have you, or like hand trap, then banish. That's just like a random example. But there's so many situations where like just Fenrir alone is enough because the card is so broken. It doesn't just banish, it banishes it face down, which is a huge issue.
Unchained, pure Unchained, getting a lot of support, getting good cards like Yama and the level 6s that can make you some negates on the board. Overall fun, cute, cool. In terms of power level, not sure it's going to be able to compete with like most of these, even though like it has some, it does have some nice matchups against like things like Runic, for example. Maybe even Labyrinth. You don't want to destroy stuff. Even branded, like you don't want to, unless it's Mirror Jade. Chimera and stuff doesn't work. So it does have that going on. It might be like probably around here. I'm assuming. I don't really know where to put this. Let's run a little bit faster. Bestial control. Yeah, I don't know if it's like
I'd leave it up by Dragon.
By Dragon.
I would keep it in the same category. We're seeing the bestial control.
Though, right?
Yeah, we're seeing bestial control add in quick launches and tracer. So
it's becoming the same deck.
It's not. Yeah, it's almost the same thing, but it's not. It's like slightly different. So like it's almost the same deck. They have like notable differences, but it is almost the same deck now.
Yeah. We love Lubellion in this household. Flanders, I played a Duelist Nexus tournament like last week or something like that. 7 Swiss rounds, 2 of them were Flanders. It seems like every time that I forget this deck exists, it pops back up and suddenly I'm like against Rubina and stuff. I think this deck somehow, not somehow, we know it relies mainly on floodgates, but it still manages to pull through, It still manages to be really hard, and for some decks, impossible to play against.
Yeah, Fluendaries is always going to be a deck, right? It has a really good Tier matchup. Like, I know that people will say, like, oh, it can just get, like, sucked up by, like, a Rise Heart, like all the birds. But at the same time, like, Fluendaries play so many board breakers. They're just known to play so many. And the deck itself, when it's able to go first and establish a board, Book of Moon is an amazing card. And the deck has several of them. So I think for that alone, that the deck has to be tier 2. You could argue 1.5. You could, just because it has such a good cash matchup and it's very generically good in the format. It main decks D-Shifter. It's a deck that has not left the meta in forever. So you could argue either way, but I think the deck's still very solid.
I was thinking about it somewhere here.
Yeah, it's also very cheap right now, so it's a really solid option.
All right, let's not put it above Sprite. Let's not go crazy. The reason I put Earth Machines here is because of their top cut. This was in my last tier list, and I was like, okay, we have to acknowledge that because people are, we're talking about it.
Ruin Forest plus Skill Drain is real crazy. That's all I can say. When it comes to Earth Machine, I would always put it in D, just because, like, I don't think the deck's very good in general, but, like, it's one of those decks that does top here and there, so you can respect it a bit with putting it in C. But overall, I don't think that it's very good, but it's definitely better than the next decks.
You think it's better than the next deck?
Oh, that card is like E tier, or like that deck.
I mean, it can do stuff, right? I mean, if it gets going, kind of gets going.
Is there a Z tier?
We'll put it right back into the list. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Like Gary said, I mean, I don't think it's really worth noting, but I think we're coming down to the last two, which I'm super excited to talk to you about both of them, because I think we are, first of all, lore. We love the lore, and lore is being lored out in Duelist Nexus. It's coming to a point where you finally have like a full lore deck. You have decks that run 4 planets, which is really cool. What are you thinking about these decks in the coming format?
So I'm actually playtesting a lot of Monodome tier right now, unironically. Playing all 4 planets is one of the coolest things that you can do. It's super based, and activating set rotation is very cool.
AFD.
Being able to summon Ancient Fairy Dragon, yeah. Also very cool. There's a lot of really nice plays. So I brought up one in the podcast where if you open up like Pearl Reno plus Revolution Synchron, you can search the Rhino Heart, send to your cash mill 2, Revolution plus Rhino and Ancient Fairy, pop your field spell, grab Calarium, and then you add the Riem Heart, Ancient Fairy Special, the Riem Heart, and then you're able to add the Obsidian, and then you can bring back the Revolution Synchron, summon the Vasat Synchro, add Reframing, and now use your Vasat Synchro and the Riem Heart to go into Crimson. So just off 2 cards, you can do quite a bit, and playing multiple planets is actually like really impactful. So there's a lot of like really cool plays that you can do in the deck. Overall, I think that like the Monodome deck is going to be very solid moving forward. I think that there's still a lot that has to be figured out. Like that deck's never been solved yet, and it needs to be. But I think there's just so many different avenues that it's hard to. So I think that putting Monodome at like either a really high B tier or like a super low A tier is probably where it'll be until it's figured out. I would have to put a tier honestly in just about the same spot, because so not only does tier have a Revolution Synchron now, unfortunately we don't have Chaotic Ruler like the OCG does that keeps that deck alive. I think that's a little unfortunate, but we were also getting the Horus cards in AGov, so I'm just going to keep thinking about like that kind of a build that we get to play, which is already crazy because the card's like Zombie Vampire, so if you don't already have yours, probably pick one up just to have it. I think overall,
mine. Great.
Yeah, I think overall, Tier Limit is another deck that you can't deny that it has results as of late. You know, like it has been doing nuts. Like it's been really good. So I think that's really cool just because of where the deck is and how hit it is. I think that it's funny. The 2 decks that I love in this game are 2 of the most egregiously hit decks in history. But at the same time, I think that both of these have a lot of potential in the new format and post AGov.
Yeah, I think in the future we might see some. I am holding off on tier here because I think that, I mean, I know you love the deck, I don't think it's been doing that well recently. I mean, it's been doing well for a dead deck. That I'll give you that. Like for a deck that has been absolutely slaughtered, it's been doing fine. But I don't think it's like, you know, it's still in the ground, basically. And, you know,
It's still topping every event.
it's doing fine in some people's hands, but it's still like, you know, sneaking in a win. And maybe you can give that. So, like, you would expect a good deck to do that anyway, right? So, what I'm saying is, like, for a deck that has been hit to the ground, it's doing fairly well. Like, if it's still managing to top, it's doing fairly well. I mean, I want to put it right next to between Brandon and Sprite, in my opinion. We'll take it. You're a guest on the channel. You know, we'll give you that. We'll give you that.
The format seems very interesting. I know that there's a couple cards here, a couple decks here that you're probably curious about like placement on, and a lot of it just has to do with like if you see like branded a bit lower, at least in my opinion, it's just like there's so many other decks that I would play before that deck, and that's where I'd put something like lower than something else, right? Or like if there is a certain deck on here that you're curious about, definitely go ahead and comment down, and we'll comment back and just kind of tell you like the thought process further if you want to have a conversation about that. But most of the decks on here I've tested exclusively and just really try to make sure that like I understood which decks can actually perform in the format that we're at. And the other thing you got to realize is most of these don't matter at all while D-Shifter is still legal. Like you can play all the cool decks you want, but the second you get D-Shifted, it's how well can your deck play out of that right now. And until that gets addressed, I think that everything else is a bit irrelevant, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you so much to GGYGO for tuning in for this, you know, surprise tier list live on stream. Definitely check out his channel. This is a branded channel. We have branded here as tier 2. I want to see some, you know, angry comments. Thank you so much again for GGYGO for tuning in. See you in the next one. Peace.